Good evening and welcome to UCSD Impact. I'm Jim Langley, the Vice Chancellor for External Relations here at the University of California, San Diego. Tonight we'll look at the university's role in developing charter schools in the San Diego region. UCSD started with the Preuss School in 1999, and thanks to a vote earlier this month by the San Diego School Board, UCSD will work with the Gompers Middle School in southeast San Diego as it converts to charter next fall. We'll talk about how these partnerships operate and what problems to avoid with Louise Oakley, the president of the San Diego City Schools Board of Education, and Professor Bud Mehan, the director of UCSD's Center for Research on Educational Equity, Access, and Teaching Excellence, or CREATE. But first, some background from Shannon Bradley.
When California voters put a stop to race-based admissions to its public universities in 1996, leaders at UCSD looked for new ways to bring diversity to its student population. Among the most prominent projects was the creation of the Preuss School, aimed at low-income but ambitious young students who wanted to be the first in their families to attend college. Preuss would be a model charter school where UCSD educators could try new programs to improve middle and high school education.
While the success of the school may breed 1,000 founders, and it probably will, let me set the record straight here today. This school is a brainchild of Cecil Lytle.
Cecil Lytle is the provost of Thurgood Marshall College at UCSD. The Preuss School opened to much fanfare in 1999. Fast forward to 2004, the Preuss School graduated its first class, and 90% of the students went on to enroll in a four-year college. But elsewhere in San Diego, other schools were struggling. The Gompers Middle School in Choice View was told that student achievement was so low that under federal law it had to change.
Everybody has this misconceptions about our children here, that they're ghetto kids, they can't learn, that they're not smart, that there's nothing we can do for our children. And it's sad because nobody really knows who they are and how hard they come along, and we want so much for them. I truly believe that we can give them more, and we should. They deserve it.
So parents like Michelle Evans and librarian Dora Marr joined with others to form a working group to look at the options for Gompers and make a recommendation to the San Diego School Board. Participation in the meetings was high.
So many people want to see change at Gompers, not just the parents, not just the teachers, but the administrators, the community, you know. People want something, want to change. And this was our opportunity to have a voice, a real voice in our kids' future.
These parents want more for their children. They don't just want them to work at menial jobs and work in factories or work in hotels cleaning bathrooms. That's not what they want. Their dream is to have their child go to college, go to medical school, go to law school, go to engineering school to become teachers. That's the dream. That's the dream my parents had for us. We were immigrants.
The work group approached UCSD's Cecil Lytle and Bud Mehan and asked for their help in turning Gompers into a charter school to be modeled after Preuss.
There's a lot of good things about going charter. You get to select the teachers that you want in the school, teachers that want to be here versus teachers that are placed here.
It's about local control. If we can control things, we can say to this teacher, okay, this teacher is an ineffective teacher. What's going on in this classroom? Why is it that this kid is coming home saying that there's no homework? Is there no homework? That type of thing. The parents can hold the teachers accountable. The teachers can hold the parent accountable.
If we do go charter and we have UCSD supporting us, they're going to provide tutors for our children. They have 150 tutors available. That'd be so wonderful. Picture a teacher having a tutor every single day, you know, for 2 or 3 classes a day, helping her in the classroom. The other one is they will provide in-service training for teachers for free.
Traditional public schools cannot go charter unless the majority of parents and teachers support the change. Building that majority took some work.
We went door to door, not just myself, but Clarissa Lopez and a lot of other parents. We went in teams of 2, teams of 3, and we walked this neighborhood. When I say we walked, I'm talking hours. We walked. We asked our teachers that were on the work group, can you please come and walk with us and go and meet your students' parents? And that gave the charter validity, because the parents were like, man, the teachers have worked and they're out here walking the neighborhood until dark. And the teachers get off at work at 2 o'clock, and they stayed until 5 and 6 o'clock at night.
Michelle Evans and others also testified to the school board on behalf of the charter plan many times, including the night the board scheduled its final vote.
The master plan that we hope you will approve this evening includes certain enhancements to the academic program and social program at Gompers Middle School. And that includes mirroring much of what UCSD has attempted to institute at Preuss School UCSD. And that includes a longer school year for time on task, a longer school day, and the entire intent of this academic mission is to prepare Gompers Middle School students to successfully traverse the A through G requirements for the University of California.
My request to you as a board is very simple. Stay within the law. They did what you asked them to do. They got a high percentage of the parents. They got the 58% of the teachers. They have come back to you at least on 2 occasions and fulfilled every requirement that you laid on their plate. Now it's your opportunity to do what I consider to be the appropriate and the responsible thing of listening to these parents and teachers who are asking you to approve their charter.
Unlike others, I guess I'm not excited about charters because I've seen them go and come, and I've seen this board approve and reapprove charters that have failed year after year after year without the guts to cut them off.
I still will raise some concerns, and those concerns are about the teachers that signed it and teachers that feel trapped. Unfortunately, for my peers, they have not worked under this regime and know what it's like to be trapped, know what it's like that if you speak out that you are targeted with extra saddle work.
Unless I had people say, you know, I felt trapped or fooled, then I guess I'll have to say that I haven't heard from the teachers that they didn't know what they signed.
UCSD support means a great deal to me. And Mr. Lytle, I know that you know how to get things done. Mr. Mehan, I know you do too. And I know that you consider this a sacred trust and that you'll work with the community, but it's going to be hard work. It's going to be a lot.
You have a responsibility to reach out and find areas of agreement and work together. You need to build a team. If all we have is just the people that were on the one side, that doesn't constitute a team. I want you to approach the next few days with a keen sense of responsibility and duty to build bridges.
And with that, the school board president called the vote, and much to the surprise of those gathered, the vote was unanimous in support of the Gompers petition. The Gompers Middle School will reopen as a charter school next fall.
Now to our guest. Luis Oakley was elected to the Board of Education last November and then was later named president by his peers. Before running for office, Mr. Oakley taught in many of the district's high schools and middle schools. He also served as an aide to President Ronald Reagan and as a business consultant with Booz Allen and Hamilton. And Bud Mehan, a professor of sociology here at UCSD and the director of CREATE, which coordinates UCSD's efforts to prepare underrepresented students for college through partnerships with public schools in the region and with the campus-based Preuss School. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Bud, if I could, I'd like to start with you. What factors or forces does the chartering of a school unleash that ultimately points the students toward improved academic performance?
First of all, I'd like to thank the school board, and especially Mr. Oakley, for the very courageous act that they took the other night at the school board in approving the Gompers Charter as well as the other charters, because I think this presents a wonderful opportunity for innovation within the school district, and we're very pleased to work with them as a partner in that effort. What does a charter school bring and enable within a community? I think the biggest aspect there is flexibility. I think charter schools have the potential to provide flexibility of not just hiring teachers and the principal, but also flexibility in the educational plan. The school day can be modified, manipulated in ways that are consistent with the needs of the local community. So I'd say the single most important thing is flexibility.
Do you have any concerns that the empowering of one group, and perhaps this case the parents who got behind this charter, in any way disempowers any other group, be it administrators, the school board, or perhaps teachers?
No, I don't think so, and the reason for that is the charter law is very specific in expecting a diverse group to form the management of the school. A governing board has to be put into place that has to have representation from the district. In our case, it'll be from the university. There'll be parent representation very strongly, but also community members. And these have to be put on that board through a very democratic process. So, taking what Mr. Oakley said to us the night of the school board very seriously, we have to build a teamwork approach that will include and represent the broad base of the Gompers community.
And do you have any concerns that it's one thing to get energy behind a charter and another thing to move it systematically toward improved academic performance? And what do you look for along the way?
Well, you're absolutely right. But first of all, the energy that was expressed in that community among the parents, the teachers, and community members who didn't have kids in that school, starting in October when the school board asked members of that community and others to come up with an alternative plan because they had not met federal guidelines, was really impressive, Jim. The energy, the passion, the commitment of these folks, the parents, the teachers, members of the community was vital and impressive and energized us from the university, I know, each and every night that we met. And they met every Tuesday and every Thursday night from about 6 o'clock till 10 o'clock. So there's no doubt that there's passion and commitment. And I think that will carry over with structuring to the development of an educational plan that the people in that neighborhood really, really want. You heard Michelle Evans, one of the parents who in fact is the leader of the planning group, express that very eloquently. So that's our charge right now, is to convert that passion into a viable educational plan.
Luis, as we saw from the tape, not all the school board members were foursquare behind this proposal. Do you think the tape fairly summarized their concerns, or what might you add to that for our audience?
I think that there was a certain amount of concern, a preoccupation, because we want the schools to succeed. And there are charters that haven't succeeded. There are some that have had problems, not just in terms of the educational strategy, but in terms of the management of the finances and all that complexity. I believe that this process, which really turned out to be almost cathartic, has all kinds of very good omens. And what we were talking about, the parent involvement, is crucial for the success of the students as students. In fact, I think that you have pretty much established that at Preuss, where you actually make an agreement with the students and the parents, and you obtain a commitment from the parents. And I would suggest to you that it is so important to have that kind of priority in the home, because when education of their children is a high priority for the parents, the students are much more likely to succeed.
And despite whatever concerns some board members may have, if I'm correct, there were 4 separate charters that were approved that evening?
There were 4 separate charters, and all but one were approved unanimously. And that, I think that establishes that the board is being thoughtful, analytical, committed, and open-minded.
And not concerned perhaps that the board gave in to charter fever?
I don't believe that, no. No, this board doesn't seem to give in at all. And they go through the process of making up their mind in a very conscientious way. The cost to us as a board has been that we have very long meetings and long discussions, but we have been able to express our thoughts and amalgamate them and bring the better ideas together so that we're beginning to work as a group to the benefit of the children.
But tell us a little bit how you got involved with this project, what pulled you in, and tell us if you saw your role as an advocate or an advisor in this process.
We from CREATE, and I would include Cecil Lytle as part of CREATE in that discussion, was a combination of 2 things. One, as you know, when the Preuss School and CREATE were established now many years ago, one of our charges was to make the Preuss School a model that could be used in other educational environments. And now that the Preuss School has reached a certain maturity with its first graduating class, we think we have learned some lessons that we can then pick up and move and make sensitive to the contexts that are in other neighborhoods. And so with that was one force that was operating. And the second is we were invited by the planning committee in Gompers to come talk to them about the possibility of taking the lessons we had learned and bringing them to the Gompers neighborhood. So Cecil Lytle and I attended many meetings of the planning group and told them about what the Preuss School was about and many of the challenges that we faced then and many of the challenges that we would face as we try to grow that school in this new environment, because frankly there is not a one-to-one relationship. There are many, many differences about moving the ideas that we developed at Preuss into the Gompers neighborhood. We have to be very, very serious and conscientious about that. But it was that combination, Jim, of our mandate in developing the Preuss School when we developed it, and the invitation from the community to bring those two things together.
And it may well be that the most significant, most important decision made by the work group was precisely to invite you, to compel you. I think they were willing to bring you even against your will.
Well, I think there was, in the beginning, there was this idea that UCSD would take over Gompers School, and we had to dispel that idea right away for a number of different reasons. That was not something that we were capable of doing, and we didn't think it was also a desirable thing to do. We really believe in the idea that the local community should have a lot to say about how the schools are developed.
But there was a great deal that was said, I think verbalized quite properly, about the significance of your presence at the table. Because some of this is symbolic, if you wish, but the mere fact that UCSD is associated with this brings all this academic achievement aura that says we know how to prepare students so that they can get admitted at the UC system. And even if it was just the symbolism, let me tell you, that was a big part of it. Yeah, I'm not sure that they expected you to take over.
Well, I'm glad the way it worked out, that we have this idea of a strong partnership, but also this idea of the UCSD stamp, if you will. Part of the value that is added by having the Preuss School on campus is that there's a culture of learning here. This is an institute of higher education, after all. And by having the students interact, it isn't just that they're in a rigorous and demanding course, but that they're on a campus, and that there is an expectation of excellence and rigor in all domains. And we want to bring that same idea to the Gompers campus. And that's something it's not necessarily tangible. It's in the air. It's part of the atmosphere that we're a part of, the air that we breathe. And that is what we want to do, and we think that intangible is what's going to make the Gompers experience very beneficial.
We're optimistic ourselves, very much.
And you clearly have struck up a very nice working relationship and a very respectful working relationship. I thought your injunction that we saw on the tape, that the sides, to the extent that sides were taken in the deliberation, that they be diminished or you really couldn't move forward with unanimity was very well taken. But what can you do in the short run, to the extent there were sides taken, to minimize that?
Well, one of the things the important thing is that the board vote was unanimous, and I think that is very, very important. And I've said to Trustee Jackson, who is the representative from that neighborhood, that it is our goal, our intent, to make her schools in that neighborhood the very best that we possibly can do, and that we are there to help her and the board achieve that goal. If we can be a handmaiden in that experience, so much the better.
I have the impression that before approval, there was this feeling of competition and maybe campaign mode. We were trying to go in one direction or another and sway opinions and convince people. But I'm very optimistic that by now we have left and closed that chapter. It is as though we have finished a political campaign, and now we roll up our sleeves and make it work.
Excellent. Now let's talk about what can be transferred from the Preuss School, because you have become a model in people's eyes. The success of the Preuss School has raised the sights and collective expectations of the community. Bud, what do you think of all the things that we've learned at the Preuss School are directly transferable?
Well, the first thing to realize is that the students are going to be very much the same. There's a certain irony that there's a school bus that stops right outside the gate of Gompers and picks up the kids from that neighborhood and brings them here. So their kids are the same. Now, there's a very strong family component and student motivation component that enters the equation even before a school like Preuss enters that equation. The parents believe that their children can be successful. You heard Dora and Michelle say that on the tape, and I think that part is equal in both cases. The teachers are also going to be essentially equivalent in that at the Preuss School, our teachers have the highest expectations for the students who are there. They believe that every student in that school can learn at the highest level, and we want the teachers who will be at Gompers to have that same idea, that we're not going to differentiate, that all students will be given experience with the most rigorous and demanding curriculum. Now, at the same time, we have learned at the Preuss School that not all students are equally prepared to meet that rigorous curriculum. So what we have come to call scaffolds have to be added to the equation to enable students to have more time on task, more tutoring, more experiences, maybe repeating work, or instead of doing 10 math problems, doing 20 or 30. So we have to add those extra reinforcements while still keeping the standards high. And frankly, I think that's a philosophical difference that concerns the Preuss School that runs against the grain of American education over the last 100 years. We've had a tendency, unfortunately, in American education to stratify students based on a perception of their ability. Some people get a college prep classroom and experience, and other people are given a vocational or a general education. We will not stratify the students in that respect. They will all be given demanding and rigorous instruction in their 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. And that, we think, is important regardless of what choices they make in life. So, high expectations, scaffolding of experience, highly qualified teachers. They have to know their subject matter. They have to be sensitive to a pedagogy that will be dealing with racial and ethnic and linguistic diversity, because Gompers is an urban community. The students are coming from a wide range of ethnic and linguistic backgrounds, and teachers have to be sensitive to and use that resource in the classroom.
Could we explore that topic
Certainly.
right there?
Yeah.
Big distinction. Preuss School's on campus.
Right.
You've crossed kind of a psychological barrier, if you will. You're on a college campus.
Right.
It seems perhaps more attainable, more present, more real. What about that distinction? And Luis, I want to ask you a similar question.
Well, what's interesting is we're reversing a transportation cycle here. In the case of Preuss, students from all over Southeast San Diego have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get on a bus and drive to the campus and then do the same thing at the end of the day. So they're making that move in that direction. We want to bring the university to the community. So in a sense, we are now making the bus ride from the campus to Gompers. In fact, we do want to run a blue bus from UCSD to Gompers on a regular basis so that our tutors and members of the faculty can easily go between the two campuses. So that will be a challenge, but it's that idea that there's the culture of learning, not just the physical attributes of learning, but the culture of learning, that we think that UCSD, with its faculty and students as resources, can be brought to the community at Gompers.
But Luis, we hear, for instance, that some peers put pressure, false pressure, negative pressure on other students. In other words, in certain areas, if a student starts to achieve, there can be a leveling from his or her peers. You don't need to be different from us. You don't need to be. Don't you worry about fatalism or perhaps any kind of self-limiting assumptions that could already be in that school?
You know, maybe this is the reason that we're so interested in incorporating the parents. The parents are very focused on their own children, and I think that they can be extremely helpful to resist some of the social pressures to conform, because what we really want them is to succeed. And yes, it takes effort, it takes work, it takes dedication, a lot of sacrifice on the part of the children, and the parents have an obligation to be the teachers in place when we, the teachers, are not there. Right. The same way that when we are teaching, we have the children under our care, and we are responsible the way the parents would be for their safety and for their care. Well, I want to turn that around and make it very clear that parents have an obligation to be the adult at home, because the teacher's not there all the time.
Right.
And there are assignments to be completed. There's a schedule. If you're going to get up early and be alert enough to take and pass a test, somebody has to tell that student to go to bed early. I'm counting on parents.
Preuss School started with a blank slate. You start with a history. Do you see any distinction that you worry about? Isn't that different?
It may be a more difficult task, yes. And that's probably the main reason that I am so pleased with the symbolic presence of UCSD. Because it is as though you were engaged in a production capacity in one location and you go to another location, but you bring the same skill, the same brand, the same production facilities. And the main thing that you know is how to prepare students to get into college. Right. And that's what their parents want. That's what the students want.
Yeah, I would like to just supplement one or two of Luis's ideas. This idea of peer pressure and a negative peer pressure, trying to diminish the academic performance of students. One of the things that we've learned at the Preuss School, and a couple of my students are investigating this in detail now, is that since everybody at the Preuss School is academically oriented, that peer pressure now becomes a positive sort. And what we're noticing is that the Preuss School students, when they go back home and at the end of the day, hang out with their Preuss School friends more than they do with other neighborhood friends. And so let's take that idea to Gompers. If the whole school is academically oriented, then the peer pressure becomes a positive one. And Doris Alvarez has been, and her teachers at Preuss have been quite adroit at having students work together, collaborate on projects so that one is helping the other. And we think that is a principle that we can bring to Gompers as well. And the issue of parents, as you know, all the parents at the Preuss School have not completed college. The neighborhood at Gompers is much the same. This is not an overeducated community. And one would say, well, those parents don't know how to prepare their students to be college eligible. How do they help them study? Well, we're going to do two things about that. Luis is absolutely right. The parents are motivated and they know basic kinds of considerations about the necessity for study time and not having a television on during study and all the rest. But we also want to reinforce that and make available to the parents at Gompers educational activities so that they themselves can pursue their education. Doris Alvarez did some very nice things at Preuss a year or two ago, where on Saturdays the parents were invited to Preuss to learn principles of learning and the math courses that were being taught and all the rest. And they got community
learn English.
That's right, exactly.
That's extremely important because there are times when really the only person who speaks with some authority in the household is our students.
Is the kid, that's correct.
And they are fluent enough and they get into it and they learn it by necessity, if you wish. But the real handicap is the parents. And there are so many times in which we want to communicate with the parents and we really can't do that without a translator.
Right. See, this is where we have an advantage, Jim, because Doris had to have the parents come to Preuss on a Saturday. That produces transportation difficulties for many parents. If we have parent education courses at Gompers on Saturday morning or at night, then we don't have the transportation problem. It's our problem to get there, but we can solve that. And what I really would like to do, and we've talked to the teachers and staff at Gompers, is to make this a 24/7 vibrant activity. School will go on 9 to 3, Monday through Friday, say, but there are a whole set of activities. That's a beautiful auditorium. There are things that can be done there. There are many, many activities that we can use the school as a community center.
Luis, with time quickly elapsing, any further thoughts, a perspective that you would add to help our viewers understand this transition?
Yeah, I would just simply mention the significance of the fact that we're talking about a middle school. The middle school years are probably the toughest. And I would suggest to you that the quality of the high school students is determined well before high school. It's actually determined in middle school or before.
Right.
Too little time, I'm afraid, for such an important topic. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you both for a fabulous discussion, and thank you for joining us. My guests have been Luis Oakley, the president of the San Diego City Schools Board of Education, and Bud Mehan, the director of UCSD's Center for Research on Educational Equity, Access, and Teaching Excellence. This is UCSD Impact. I'm Jim Langley. Thank you and good night.